Asterisk disclaimer asterisk this story is intended for entertainment purposes only. It is based on folklore, personal accounts, and oral traditions that may contain elements of superstition and the paranormal. Viewer discretion is advised. They say that in every quiet village, hidden far away from the noise of the cities, there are stories whispered between neighbors, passed down by elders, and spoken only in hushed voices after dark. Stories that you're not supposed to hear. Stories that people try to forget, but never really can. This is one of those stories. And once you hear it, you may find it hard to sleep at night. Because it's not about a ghost haunting an old house or a monster lurking in the woods. It's about something much closer to home. Something that hides behind the face of someone you love. Something that may already be watching you, waiting. The villagers in that remote part of the Philippines didn't talk much. Life was simple there. The days passed slowly, and the nights were darker than anything you'd ever see in the city, so dark, in fact, that the trees along the hills seemed to vanish into the sky. There were no streetlights, just the soft flicker of candles and oil lamps in wooden houses raised on stilts. At night, the wind would howl through the trees, carrying strange sounds that no one could explain. Animal cries, yes, but different. Like something pretending to be an animal. The kind of sound that makes even the bravest farmer pause before stepping outside after sunset. In one of those houses lived a young couple, barely in their 20s, who had just had their first child, a baby girl. At first, everything seemed normal. Visitors came by to see the baby, to offer gifts and blessings, and to wish the new family well. But within weeks, the mood around the home began to change. The baby never cried. Not once. Not during the day, not at night. Her eyes were wide and too dark, almost black, and she would stare at people in a way that made them uncomfortable, like she was seeing something behind their eyes. Her skin was pale, almost gray in the right light, and when her mother held her close, she often felt a strange chill, like holding something that had been left out in the rain. At first, the mother said nothing. She was tired, overwhelmed, and maybe imagining things. That's what she told herself. But late at night, when her husband was asleep, she would lie awake, listening. The baby would make soft noises, not cries, not coos, but small, wet clicking sounds, like something chewing very slowly. Once, she swore she saw the baby crawling across the floor faster than any newborn should be able to. But when she blinked, the child was exactly where she left her. Sleeping peacefully. When she finally told her husband, he didn't know how to react. He wanted to laugh it off, tiredness, stress, new parent nerves. But deep down, he had noticed things too. The way dogs barked whenever they passed by. The way their chickens refused to go near the baby's room. The way his own mother, the baby's grandmother, had stared at the child for a long, long time during her first visit, and said nothing. And that was the strangest part of all. The grandmother. She was an old woman, quiet and sharp-eyed. She lived alone in a small hut near the edge of the village, close to the start of the woods. People in the barangay didn't say much about her, but everyone treated her with a kind of nervous respect. Some said she knew old things, ancient herbs, lost rituals, ways of healing that only the Babalan used to know. Others whispered that she had once been involved in something darker. Something not meant to be spoken of in daylight. When she came to see the baby for the first time, she didn't react like other visitors. She didn't smile. She didn't say how cute the child was. She didn't even touch her. She just stood there, eyes locked on the infant, her thin lips pressed tight together. Then she turned to her son and said, "You must protect her." And then she left, without another word. As the days went on, the baby's behavior became harder to explain. Shadows seemed to move in her room, even with the windows closed. One night, the mother found a small bird outside the crib, dead, bloodless, with 2 perfect puncture wounds on its neck. There were no open windows. No way for an animal to get in. She screamed. Her husband rushed in. But when they checked, the baby was fast asleep, her lips slightly red. That was the breaking point. The couple didn't know what to do. They didn't want to believe it. But the signs were there, the silence, the eyes, the cold skin, the bird, the sounds. All the stories they had heard as children came flooding back. Stories of the Aswang. Creatures that lived among humans, feeding in secret. Sometimes they were beautiful women, other times animals, and sometimes, children. Born that way. Cursed. The husband went back to his mother, desperate for answers. He told her everything. What he had seen, what they feared. He expected her to be horrified, to curse the creature, to tell him what to do. But she didn't. She only said, "I told you to protect her." That night, as the wind howled louder than ever through the trees, something happened. The couple woke up to find the crib empty. The door wide open. No signs of forced entry. No sounds. Just the empty room and the cold air left behind. The baby was gone. And so was the grandmother. The village searched for days, but no trace was ever found. No footprints. No blood. No torn cloth. It was like they had vanished into the night. Some say the grandmother had taken the child to save her, to raise her away from harm, to help her resist the dark hunger inside. Others believe something darker, that the grandmother had been hiding something all along, and the child was not the first. They say she lives deep in the mountains now, in a place where no one dares go after sunset. And sometimes, just sometimes, people claim they've seen something, a girl, maybe 17 or 18, with eyes too dark and a smile too cold, walking just beyond the trees. Watching. And if you listen closely, you might hear it too. Click. 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 Something that doesn't cry. Something that waits. But what happened to the grandmother? And what is the child now? Some stories never really end. They just wait, for the next person to believe. Weeks passed after the baby's disappearance, but the village didn't return to normal. Even though no one spoke about it openly, the air felt heavier, like a silence that didn't belong. People looked over their shoulders more often. Doors were locked earlier than usual. Fires were kept burning longer into the night, not for warmth, but for protection. A few neighbors claimed they saw strange figures watching from the forest line at dusk, shapes that disappeared the moment anyone looked directly at them. The house where the young couple once lived was now abandoned. No one dared to move in, even though land was hard to come by. The crib was still there, empty and gathering dust. The mother, who had fallen sick with grief, left the village not long after. Some said she had lost her mind, wandering in and out of towns, whispering to strangers about bloodless animals and eyes that never blinked. Her husband stayed a little longer, but something about him changed. He grew quiet, withdrawn. His hands always trembled. One day, he left without telling anyone, and no one ever heard from him again. But the grandmother, she became the center of whispered conversations and suspicious glances. The villagers had always treated her with cautious distance, but now there was fear. Real fear. Children weren't allowed to go near the woods anymore, and grown men refused to pass by her old hut after sunset. Strange markings were found outside her home, circles made of twigs, dead insects lined up in neat rows, and once, a chicken with its eyes removed, but no blood, no sign of a struggle. Just stillness. Like something had chosen that spot, for a reason. Still, no one could prove anything. And so, people just waited. Waited and wondered. Late one evening, an old man named Cardo, the village's most respected elder, was walking back from the river when he heard something behind him. Not footsteps. More like, rustling. Low, deliberate. He turned quickly, expecting to see a dog or maybe a neighbor playing a prank. But there was nothing. Just the trees, tall and motionless in the growing fog. He hurried home, trying not to look back again, but the feeling didn't leave him. That night, he had a dream. In it, a little girl stood at the edge of his bed, her eyes too dark to see anything else. She said nothing. She only stared. And when he woke up, there were muddy footprints on the floor. People started seeing her, or something like her, more often. A girl, thin and quiet, usually near the edge of the trees. Sometimes she was standing. Other times, crouched low, as if studying something on the ground. Her clothes were always the same, a simple white dress, stained at the hem. Her hair was tangled, falling over her face. But the strangest thing was that no one ever saw her move. One moment she wasn't there. The next, she was. One boy, maybe 12 years old, dared to follow her once. He'd heard the stories, sure, but didn't really believe them. He was with 2 friends and wanted to show off. So, when they saw the girl near the creek, he broke into a jog and shouted after her. She didn't turn. She didn't run. She just walked slowly into the trees. He followed. His friends waited, laughing nervously, but after 10 minutes, they started to worry. After 20, they ran home screaming. The boy came back the next morning, barefoot, covered in dirt, his shirt torn. He wouldn't speak. Not for days. And when he finally did, all he said was, "She didn't blink." Not once. That was the same week livestock began turning up dead. Not torn apart like in a wild animal attack. Just empty. No blood. No wounds. Eyes open, as if caught in a final moment of realization. People started talking again. The word Aswang returned in murmurs. But others weren't so sure. This felt different, older somehow. There were talks of a kind of hunger that didn't come from rage or survival, but from curiosity. Like something not human was trying to understand how to be human. No one wanted to believe the grandmother had anything to do with it. After all, she was just an old woman. But then, strange lights were seen coming from her home late at night. Blue flames, flickering without sound or smoke. And once, a loud, high-pitched scream echoed through the valley, not like a person, not like an animal. Something in between. The next morning, her hut was empty. The door still open. A single child's drawing was left on the floor, a picture of a woman holding hands with a smaller figure. Both had black circles for eyes. The forest grew quieter after that, but not in a peaceful way. The birds no longer sang near the edges. The crickets fell silent at night. Some said they could hear whispering if they stood near the trees long enough, voices speaking in a language no one recognized. A language that sounded wrong. Like it wasn't made for human mouths. One stormy evening, an outsider came into the village, a woman in her late 30s. She said she was a researcher studying regional folklore. But when she asked specifically about the girl in white, no one answered. She stayed for 3 days, knocking on doors, taking notes, asking about disappearances and sightings. On the 4th night, she was gone. Her belongings were still in the guest hut. Her notebook left open on the bed. The last page read, "She's learning." That's what terrifies me. The elders decided not to speak of it anymore. The story was buried again. But those who had seen her, those who had truly seen her, never forgot. Some even claimed that the girl had grown. Not by much, but enough to notice. Her steps a little more human, her stare more focused. As if she was figuring things out. Studying the people who watched her, mimicking the way they moved, the way they breathed. She didn't come every night. Sometimes weeks would pass without any sign. But when the wind changed direction, or the moon was a strange color, or when a dog refused to enter the house for no reason at all, that's when they knew she was near. Still watching. Still waiting. And somewhere deep in the forest, far from any road, there's a place where the ground is always cold. Where no birds land, and no animals pass. Some say that's where the grandmother took her. Others believe it's where the creature made its home. No one knows for sure. Because no one who's gone looking, has ever returned. Fear began to settle into the bones of the village like a damp chill that never left. People no longer pretended that everything was fine. The children stopped playing outside after school, and the roads that once echoed with laughter now lay silent by sundown. Old men sharpened blades they hadn't touched in years, and old women began leaving salt and garlic on their windowsills, whispering prayers into the smoke of their cooking fires. But none of it seemed to make a difference. One of the first to truly unravel was Liza, the younger sister of the missing baby's mother. She had been only 17 when her niece vanished, and though she'd tried to move on, something always pulled her back. It started with dreams. First, just flashes, the face of the child, wide-eyed and staring, then gone. But the dreams got longer. She'd see the forest, dark and alive, branches twisting like fingers. The grandmother was always there too, her face expressionless, standing behind the child without moving. Always watching. Never blinking. But then Liza started sleepwalking. Her parents would find her standing outside their home at night, barefooted and glassy-eyed, her hair wet even though it hadn't rained. She'd wake up with scratches on her arms, dirt under her nails, and the scent of rotting leaves clinging to her clothes. One morning, she was found sitting at the edge of the river, holding something tight in her hands, a small doll made of straw, with black buttons for eyes and a mouth stitched shut. She didn't remember how she got it. She didn't want to. The elders finally decided to act. A gathering was held under the bolete tree at the center of the village, where old folk once claimed spirits gathered. There, stories were finally spoken aloud again, of past disappearances, of children who returned different, of signs that marked a growing presence of something unnatural. They spoke of the balbal, the sigbin, and of course, the aswang. But what frightened them most was the idea that maybe, this wasn't just one of those things. Maybe it was something older. Something that had learned to wear their faces. Liza's uncle, Tomas, a skeptical man who had worked years in the city before returning to take care of his aging parents, refused to believe the stories. He thought it was all superstition and fear. But that changed one night when he was driving back from a nearby town. His headlights caught something in the middle of the road, a girl, no older than 10, standing barefoot with her arms limp by her sides. Her dress was soaked, her skin pale under the beam. He hit the brakes, heart pounding, and shouted through the window, asking if she was lost. She didn't answer. He stepped out of the car. She turned and smiled. Tomas swore later that her teeth, all of them, were sharp, like a shark's. Her eyes reflected the light not like a human's, but like an animal's, wide and glassy. And she moved toward him without lifting her feet, gliding slightly over the gravel. He didn't remember running, only that he woke up behind the wheel, the engine still running, with his mouth dry and his pants wet from fear. The girl was gone. But in his rearview mirror, far off in the distance, he saw a flicker of white among the trees. Back in the village, things continued to get worse. Crops began to spoil overnight. The water from the well turned muddy without rain. Dogs disappeared. And those who stayed up late enough began to hear tapping at their windows, rhythmic and soft, like fingernails brushing glass. No one dared to look. Liza started keeping a journal, trying to track her dreams and sleepwalking episodes. But one morning, she found pages she didn't remember writing. The handwriting was hers, but shakier. Stranger. One page simply read, "She knows my name." Another page was a rough drawing, the grandmother's face with eyes completely black, and a child's hand reaching out of her mouth. As if all of that wasn't terrifying enough, another child went missing, a boy named Angelo, only 8 years old. He was last seen chasing his kite near the woods, just before sunset. His mother swore she saw a woman in white standing far off among the trees, watching him play. By the time she blinked and looked again, both were gone. The kite string was found caught in a branch, and nothing else. That's when the villagers knew something had changed. It wasn't just the past coming back to haunt them. It was happening again. And then came the second conflict, one no one expected. Tomas began to behave strangely. He stopped speaking during the day and wandered off for hours without explanation. People began to notice he was always nearby when strange things occurred. Liza once found him standing by her window in the middle of the night, just watching. When she called out to him, he turned away without saying a word. Then the whispering began. People said they saw Tomas talking to someone in the woods, but there was no one there. Others claimed they saw him leave meat at the base of certain trees, raw and red, as if feeding something. One child even said he saw Tomas digging a hole behind his house, whispering lullabies as he worked. The village started to split. Some believed Tomas was cursed or possessed. Others thought he was protecting the thing in the forest. That maybe he'd made a deal. That maybe he had always known more than he let on. Liza didn't want to believe it. He was family. But deep down, she had seen the same look in his eyes that she'd seen in the girl in her dreams, distant, cold, studying. One night, she followed him. She didn't tell anyone. Just waited, heart pounding, until he left his house under the cover of darkness. She followed barefoot, silent through the brush, keeping to the shadows. Tomas walked deep into the forest, to a clearing she had never seen before. And there, under the pale light of the moon, he knelt down and whispered something. And someone answered. Not with words, but with a sound, low, wet, and unnatural, coming from the ground, from the trees, from everywhere all at once. Liza held her breath. She saw movement. Not Tomas. Not a person. Something else. It stepped forward, but only a little, enough for her to see the edge of a pale leg, long black hair, and a face that flickered in the moonlight like it didn't belong in this world. Liza turned to run. But the sound followed. Not footsteps. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing, right behind her. Liza ran. Branches tore at her skin, and roots clawed at her feet, but she didn't stop. The forest, once familiar and peaceful, had become a maze of shadows and whispers. The breathing behind her wasn't loud, but it was close, too close. It wasn't panting or gasping. It was calm. Measured. As if whatever followed her had no need to hurry. It wasn't chasing her to catch her. It was walking because it knew she'd fall eventually. The moonlight barely pierced through the thick canopy now. Her lungs burned. Her hands trembled. She didn't dare look behind her again. She'd seen enough. The way the thing in the clearing didn't walk like a child. The way its skin moved, stretching over its limbs like it didn't quite fit. And Tomas, her uncle, her own blood, kneeling there as if he was praying to it. Or worse, protecting it. When she finally burst out of the woods, the village was asleep, unaware of the nightmare pressing in from the trees. She slammed her door shut and locked it, leaning against it with tears streaming down her face. Her body ached, her head throbbed, and her heart refused to slow down. She wanted to believe she'd imagined it. That maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. But the mud on her feet, the scratches on her arms, and the faint sound she thought she heard outside her window hours later, all said otherwise. She didn't sleep. By morning, the village had changed again. Not visibly. But everyone felt it. A heaviness in the air, like the weight before a typhoon. Liza didn't speak of what she saw. Not yet. She didn't know who to trust. Tomas acted normal, as if nothing had happened, smiling with that same tired grin and waving at children in the street. But something behind his eyes was gone, something that used to be kind. The girl in the woods, she was appearing more often now. At first only at night. Now, even in the late afternoon, people caught glimpses of her near the rice fields or by the old well. She never moved when people watched. Just stood. Waiting. One woman swore she blinked once, and when she did, she was suddenly 5 steps closer. Liza began hearing tapping on her window every night. The same rhythm, over and over. Tap tap, tap, tap tap tap. It never changed. She covered the glass. She blocked it with books. But the sound kept coming. She knew better than to look. Everyone who had looked ended up changed. Then the dreams came again. But they weren't dreams anymore. She was back in that clearing, only this time, she couldn't move. She was standing next to Tomas, both of them staring at a hole in the ground. Something writhed inside. Not with limbs, but with movement that didn't make sense. Shapes that twisted and turned as if trying to form a body. And then, rising slowly from the soil, came a face. Familiar. Soft. Small. It was her niece. Or, something wearing her niece's face. It smiled at her. Liza woke up screaming. She went to the church the next morning. It was old and mostly abandoned, but she hoped, prayed, that someone, or something, could help. She found Father Miguel there, sweeping the dust from the altar. He looked tired, more pale than usual, and when she told him what she'd seen, he didn't look surprised. Only afraid. He told her about the kanatkat, an old word, rarely used anymore. A being that learned by imitating. It didn't kill out of hunger, but out of curiosity. It watched, listened, and practiced. And when it learned enough, it could pass as human. But something always betrayed it, the way it blinked, the way it smiled, or how it moved too perfectly. The worst part, he said, was that sometimes it didn't kill the ones it copied. Sometimes, it kept them. Hidden. Buried. Breathing. Liza asked him if it could be stopped. He didn't answer. That night, a child's voice called to her from outside. Auntie, soft. Familiar. Too familiar. Liza froze. Auntie. I'm cold, it was her niece's voice. The one she hadn't heard in years. I came back, opened the door, Liza backed away. Her hands shook as she held her rosary. The tapping started again. Slow at first. Then faster. I'm hungry, she screamed, but no one came. The lights flickered, and the walls of her home groaned like the whole house was breathing. She curled into a corner, covering her ears, praying, whispering every name of God she could remember. Eventually, the tapping stopped. The voice didn't. That was the moment she realized something deeper. This thing didn't just want her fear. It wanted her trust. Her belief. The more people believed the girl had come back, the stronger it became. And Tomas, he believed. Maybe he even welcomed it. The village elders met again, this time with urgency. Liza finally spoke of what she saw. Some believed her. Some didn't. But when a third child disappeared, gone without a trace, the rest had no choice. They organized a search party. Men with torches and machetes, women with prayers and charms. They went into the forest the next night, chanting and calling, demanding the creature show itself. Only 5 returned. They wouldn't speak. Their clothes were wet. Their faces pale. One man had scratches down his back, too precise to be animal claws. Another had gone blind, his eyes were open, but they didn't see. Liza knew it was only a matter of time. That night, Tomas came to her door. He looked calm, cleaner than usual, his clothes freshly pressed. He carried a basket, fruit, fish, and bread. For the child, he said. Liza didn't answer. She stared at him, trying to read his face. She's almost ready, he said softly. She's nearly perfect now. What do you mean, she whispered. She just needs someone to teach her how to feel. He left without another word. That night, Liza didn't sleep. She packed a bag. Not to run, but to go back. She needed to know the truth. She needed to see what they had become. Whether there was still a child out there, or just a shadow in her shape. Because now, the fear wasn't just that the thing was watching. It was that one day soon, it wouldn't have to hide anymore. It would walk among them. And no one would know the difference. Not even their own families. Not even themselves. Not until it was too late. Liza waited until just before dawn, when the air turned cold and the sky began its slow shift from black to gray. She had barely slept, and when she did, it was more like slipping between nightmares. The rosary had left indentations in her palm, but she didn't let go of it. Not even when the first birds began to sing. Not even when the voices finally stopped outside her door. She knew she had to return to the clearing. She told no one this time. No warnings. No plans. She wasn't going to beg the elders or trust the priest. She needed to see with her own eyes what lay buried out there, and what had come back pretending to be her niece. Maybe she could end it. Maybe not. But doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. The forest didn't resist her this time. It felt like it was waiting. The trees parted for her feet. The wind died completely, and not a single bird called out. She didn't even get lost. The path pulled her forward, straight into the heart of the woods like it had memorized her scent. The clearing looked just as she remembered, but colder now, darker, even under the daylight. And Tomas was already there. He stood by the hole in the center of the ground, the earth disturbed and wet, as though something had recently crawled from it. He turned when he saw her but didn't look surprised. Instead, he smiled softly and held out his hand. "She wants to see you," he said. Liza felt something shift in the air, like the world held its breath. She stepped forward, slowly. And then she saw it. Her niece. Standing right beside Tomas. She looked almost normal now. Her hair was brushed. Her clothes clean. Her skin, too smooth, too perfect. Like porcelain. Like something made, not born. But her eyes, those black, glassy eyes, watched Liza with a strange kind of affection. "Do you remember me, Auntie?" the girl asked. The voice was almost exact. Almost. But not quite. There was no warmth in it. No rise and fall of human emotion. Just the rhythm of someone who had studied for too long. Liza took a step back, trembling. Tomas frowned. "Don't be afraid. She needs you. She's learning, she's almost ready." "You're the last piece." "What are you talking about?" Liza whispered. Then the girl smiled. Her mouth stretched just a little too far, revealing small, sharp teeth, not monstrous, but just wrong enough to freeze Liza's blood. "She was never taken," Tomas said quietly. "She was given." Liza blinked. "What?" "Your sister," she knew. She knew the price for keeping the village safe. The creature needed a child, and she chose her own. She chose her. "No, that's not true." "She agreed," Tomas said. "We all did, years ago. That's why the disappearances stopped. But now, the deal is broken. She wants more. She wants to be real. She wants to walk among us." Liza staggered back, her mind reeling. Her niece, the creature, tilted her head. "I want a heart." The ground trembled. The trees creaked. And then, Liza saw them. Dozens of shapes, half hidden among the trees, crouched low, twisted, watching. Some had faces. Some wore human clothes. Some even looked like villagers Liza thought had moved away long ago. They were all still. Silent. Staring. The forest had been feeding her lies. The village was already infested. She turned to run, but Tomas grabbed her arm. "She chose you too," he whispered. "You'll help her become real. You're the last bond she needs. Family." Liza shoved him away, hard. He stumbled backward, and in that moment, the girl's expression changed. Something inside her broke through the mask of calm, something hungry. The creatures began to move. Crawling from the edges of the woods, stepping silently into the clearing. Some tall, some child-sized. All of them wrong. Their movements were jerky, like puppets on strings. They didn't breathe. They didn't blink. And they were circling her now. Liza reached into her bag and pulled out the only thing she had, a bottle of salt, a lighter, and an old piece of cloth soaked in kerosene. She wrapped it quickly, lit the cloth, and hurled it at the hole. The fire burst upward, lighting the entire clearing. The creature screamed, not with mouths, but with air. The sound wasn't human or animal. It was deep and cold and sharp, like glass breaking underwater. Some stumbled back into the woods. Others flinched, but didn't leave. Tomas stared at the flames, his face twisted in grief. "You don't understand," he said. "She would have made us eternal." Liza looked at the girl again, who now stood behind the fire, her skin blistering but her eyes still locked on her aunt. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only said, "You're still mine." And then the flames went out. Just like that. No smoke. No ashes. Only silence. Liza turned to run, but the trees were different now. The path was gone. The forest had shifted. And then she realized, she wasn't in the same world anymore. Somehow, stepping into that clearing had crossed a boundary. She screamed. No one heard. Now she waits. Somewhere beyond the trees. Somewhere between the worlds of the living and the not quite dead. And the village? It still goes on. People still wake, work, and sleep. But sometimes, late at night, children hear tapping on their windows. And sometimes, they open them. And when they do, they say a little girl is standing there, smiling. And she always says the same thing, "Have you seen my auntie? She's just like me now." What would you do in this situation? Would you believe your family if they told you something wasn't human? Would you open the door? Do you think Liza is still alive? Or is it already too late? Let me know in the comments. I'll be watching. And if you hear tapping tonight, maybe don't look. Just in case. Liza ran. She didn't know where she was running to, only that she had to move. The forest no longer looked like anything she knew. The trees bent at impossible angles, their bark slick and breathing. The sky above wasn't sky anymore, it was black silk, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. Every step she took seemed to echo forever, as if the ground stretched longer behind her than in front. Her breath came out in white clouds, though the air wasn't cold. Her legs burned. Her hands were raw from crawling, falling, pushing herself away from the things that whispered behind her. She had crossed over. She didn't know how, but it was clear now, this wasn't just a haunted forest. This was a boundary. A place that should never have been entered. The clearing had been the mouth, and she had stepped right into its throat. They were hunting her now, not just Tomas, not just the girl. All of them. The taken ones. The old villagers who had disappeared. Children with crooked smiles. Women whose limbs moved like water. Men whose eyes reflected nothing. They watched her. They followed without footsteps. Some crawled, some floated, and some simply stood where she was about to go, forcing her to turn again. Still, Liza pressed forward, clutching the last of her salt, the half-burned rosary, and a carved blade her grandmother once told her never to use unless she was ready to see the truth. That blade had been buried under the family altar. Something no one ever talked about. A blade made from bone, not metal. She thought about the stories her grandmother used to whisper. About how some bloodlines were cursed to protect the boundary. How the Aswang didn't just appear, they were invited. Federal made stronger through belief and sacrifice. She had always thought it was myth. Superstition. Now, she understood, her family had been the gatekeepers. And Tomas had opened the gate. At the heart of the forest, Liza found it, a second clearing, not like the first. This one pulsed like a wound. The soil bled black liquid, and in its center stood a house. Her grandmother's house. Or what looked like it. But it was wrong, twisted, stretched tall, with windows like eyes and a front door hanging open like a mouth. She stepped forward. The house breathed. Inside, everything was as she remembered, at first. The same crooked chairs. The old sewing machine. The cracked Virgin Mary statue in the corner. But the walls moved slightly, as though they were alive. Whispers filled the air, not voices she could understand, but things close to words, like imitations. Like the forest trying to learn language. And then she saw her. The girl. Her niece. She stood by the table, head tilted, eyes wide. No longer blinking. No longer even pretending to be real. "You came back," the girl said. Her voice was deeper now. It echoed strangely. She stepped forward, and with each step, her skin rippled, changing, becoming taller, older, shifting between versions of herself. A child, a teenager, a woman. Liza stared in horror. It wasn't a mimic, it was an evolution. "You were always meant to stay," it whispered. "Your blood remembers. It's why the others gave their children. It's why Tomas helped. We were promised a family." Liza raised the bone blade. The girl smiled. "You still don't understand," it said. "You're not here to stop me." Then she stepped aside, revealing the horror behind her. In the wall, embedded in a cocoon of roots and earth, was Liza's real niece. Alive. Eyes open. Pale lips barely moving. "Auntie, help me," Liza screamed. She ran forward, but vines shot from the floor, coiling around her legs, dragging her to the ground. The girl creature leapt onto the ceiling, her limbs too long, her body cracking with every movement. Liza thrashed against the vines, stabbing at them with the blade. "You can't kill what's already been born," the creature shrieked. "But you can trade one life for another. Just like your sister did." Liza froze. Her sister had chosen? Her niece hadn't been taken. She had been sacrificed. And now it was her turn. "No," Liza gasped. "I won't give you anyone." "You already did," the creature whispered. "You brought yourself." And then, something strange happened. The blade in Liza's hand began to glow. Not with fire. Not with light. But with memory. Her grandmother's voice. Her mother's tears. The scream of the first child taken. All of it, echoing inside her bones. She understood now. The blade wasn't for the monster. It was for her. To end the line. To close the gate. The vines tightened around her. The creature lunged, but Liza turned the blade and stabbed it into her own chest. The moment it pierced her heart, the entire forest screamed. The walls of the house exploded outward, black roots writhing and curling in agony. The mimic creature shrieked and twisted, its form unraveling, flailing, breaking apart into smoke and ash. The whispers stopped. The trees groaned and cracked as light, pure, blinding light, poured through the clearing. Liza collapsed. Everything went still. When she woke, she was lying in the real forest. The sky above was blue. Birds were chirping. The clearing was gone. And so was the girl. So was the house. So was the darkness. Her niece was beside her, unconscious, but breathing. She carried her back to the village. No one spoke as she arrived. The people simply parted. They saw her eyes. They saw the blood on her shirt. They saw the girl. Tomas was never seen again. Some say he wandered into the mountains. Some say the forest finally took him. But Liza knows. The blade had done its job. The line had ended. The gate was closed. But sometimes, when she walks past the old altar in the back of her home, she hears something. Not a voice. A tap. Tap tap. Tap. Like something patiently waiting. Waiting for another door to open. What would you do if you had to choose between saving your family, or saving everyone else? Do you think this is really over, or just the beginning of something else? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, when the forest calls, don't answer. Even if it sounds like someone you love. Of course. Here's the final resolution and last scare to complete your story with 1,000 words. Following the tone, pacing, and themes, the village moved on. Or, at least, it pretended to. No one spoke of the night the sky changed. No one asked how Liza came back with the girl, or why the trees beyond the rice fields had stopped growing in that one direction, forever shadowed and silent. The priest offered prayers, though he avoided Liza's eyes. The elders, once so sure of themselves, kept their doors locked after sunset. Even the dogs, who used to bark wildly toward the woods, sat in silence now, tails curled under them, watching the tree lean with the quiet dread only animals understand. Liza didn't speak much anymore. She rarely left the house except to fetch water or check on her niece, who now slept in the old room under the crucifix. Alive, yes, but different. Quiet. Distant. Sometimes she would stare at Liza for long periods without blinking, then smile as if she'd remembered something important. Something Liza never said. The doctor said trauma. Said she needed time to heal. But time didn't explain the scratch marks on the walls each morning. Or how the rosary beads kept turning black no matter how many times Liza replaced them. Or how the girl's reflection blinked a second too late in the mirror. Still, Liza hoped. Because hope was all she had left. She had burned the blade the day she returned. Buried the ashes under holy ground, far from the village. She didn't trust herself to keep it. Not anymore. It had ended her family's blood duty, and she still didn't know if that was a blessing or a mistake. Every night, she lit a candle for her grandmother. For her sister. For Tomas. Even for the creature she'd left behind, just in case it had ever been more than shadow. But she still dreamed. Always the same dream. She's walking through the forest. It's quiet. Peaceful. The trees whisper softly, almost lovingly. Her feet don't touch the ground, but she's not floating. She's part of it. And in the distance, someone calls her name. A child's voice. Her niece's voice. Auntie. When she turns around, the forest is gone. Only darkness. And eyes. So many eyes. Watching. Waiting. Then she wakes. Always cold. Always with dirt under her fingernails, even though her door is locked and her windows sealed shut. She tells herself it's nothing. But deep down, she knows. It's not over. And it might never be. The thing she stabbed that night, the thing that unraveled in fire and light, it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. A flicker of something much older. A gatekeeper, maybe, but not the one that built the gate. Not the one that waits beyond it. Because the forest is still there. It doesn't breathe anymore, but it watches. The animals won't go near it. The wind won't blow through it. And once a month, on the same night she returned, a thin fog creeps out from under the trees and slides through the village like a whisper. No one talks about it. But they all feel it. Something knows. And the girl, Liza's niece, she hums during the fog. A slow, tuneless sound, like a lullaby without words. Her eyes turn glassy. Her hands twitch. Sometimes she scratches numbers into her bedsheets. Symbols that no one recognizes. And sometimes, when Liza listens closely, she realizes. She's humming the same tune from her dream. The same one she never taught her. The village avoids her now. People cross the street when they see her. Not out of cruelty, but fear. Respect. She's not one of them anymore. She's something else. A guardian? A survivor? A warning? Maybe all of the above. One night, Liza sat outside, staring into the forest. The moon was high. The fog hadn't come yet. Everything was still. She heard the door creak open behind her. Light footsteps. Then her niece's voice. Auntie, do you think she's lonely? Liza didn't answer. She didn't ask who she was. She didn't want to know. Instead, she said softly, go back to bed. A pause. Then, she dreams about you. Liza turned. Her niece was already gone. The door shut by itself. She didn't sleep that night. And now, As you sit here, listening, watching, ask yourself this: what would you have done? Would you have gone into that forest? Would you have traded your life for someone else's? Would you have believed your own blood could lie to you, just to keep the village safe? And if something came to your door, smiling in a familiar voice, would you recognize the difference? Or would it already be too late? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you believe the forest is truly done? Or is Liza just the next gatekeeper in a line that never really ends? Do you want to hear what happens next? Because if you do, then listen closely the next time the wind changes. Something might be listening too. And it's always hungry for stories. Especially the true ones. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you. That means you're one of the few brave souls who can handle what lurks in the shadows. You're not just here for a story, you're here for the chill that creeps up your spine, for the mysteries that don't always have answers. But before we end tonight's tale, I have a question for you. Did you feel the cold while listening? Did you hear something move behind you? Did something flicker at the corner of your eye? If you did, maybe you weren't alone. If you want more stories like this, real accounts of horror, chilling folklore, and unspeakable truths, don't forget to like this video. Every like you leave is like lighting a candle to keep our channel safe from the eyes that might be watching. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell, too. Because when the next story arrives, when the next darkness creeps in, you'll want to be one of the first to hear it. On this channel, you don't just watch stories. You feel them. You carry them with you. And maybe, just maybe, they follow you home. But here's the most important part: we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something like this? Does your grandmother know a story too dark to share during the day? Is there something about your hometown that no one talks about? Tell us in the comments below. In this community, your stories matter. Real or not, if it gave you chills, it belongs here. And who knows? Your story might just be featured in one of our next videos. So before you go, like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Every click, every message, every shared tale keeps this circle of firelight burning, and keeps what's out there from creeping too close. Until we meet again. Be careful. And if you hear knocking on your door tonight, don't open it too fast. It might not be for you.